Hello and welcome to the CHRISTWVRKS Podcast. Today I've got Ogrebabe with me. Do you want to quickly give a rundown of what you're kind of known for? Because I mean I still don't know what to say.
So my name on Instagram is Ogrebabe, but my stage name, my performance name is SHREK666.
Oh, okay, right. I didn't know which way round it was.
Yeah, so that's my stage name. I perform. I'm a resident at the Night Shoot Your Shot, like a queer night in Glasgow, but I perform kind of all over. But obviously, recently with everything that's been happening and performances and all these live spaces, it's kind of changed into more making video work. I sometimes do makeup artist jobs, other freelance design work, but mainly I'm a performer.
Yeah, you've been doing loads of live streaming and stuff. Is that something you did a wee bit of that before the quarantine, eh?
I suppose so, yeah, but yeah, since the quarantine, it's because Shoot Your Shot, we've done live streams maybe twice a month. And then there's been other events like Queer Theory Glasgow. That's a queer cabaret show, and they done a live stream that was really good. And then on last Saturday, a night in London called Monster Queen, which is great. It's a really good gothy kind of night where they had really good DJs and featured dancers, which was a great idea for the stream, and performances. And that was good. And it's good. I am enjoying making film, but it's certainly completely different to what I was doing before.
Quite tiring, I've found, to kind of, because obviously you have an avenue that you naturally flow down, and then now it's okay, now here's a huge new list of constraints that you've got, so you've got to try and figure out a way to make yourself fit into this new world of constraints. And it's much more intellectually exhausting than it was before, I've found. What do you reckon?
I've quite enjoyed it, but then the thing that I like the most about performing live is the kind of embracing that kind of chaotic energy, or that liveness, which is definitely something that I miss, but it's almost giving up control. And when I'm making a film or a video performance, I have control over each frame, over each second. So in that way, it's interesting, and I'd be interested to see how turning the video performances, how that would recreate in a live setting. But yeah, it's been good. I've been really busy in this whole lockdown situation, which is good. I'm really lucky that I have a studio in my home, so yeah, it's been helpful.
Yeah, I found that at first I was yes, this is gonna be amazing. I can treat it like a fucking stay in a monastery and just completely delve myself into my work or whatever. But then I kind of worked so hard and so unrelentingly at first that I've kind of burnt myself out a wee bit, and now I'm I had a list of things that I wanted to do that tattooing kind of didn't allow me enough time to do, and then now I've done it all, and now I'm trying to find more things to do, and that's a bit more exhausting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're entitled to a break and all, innit?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's for the last 5 years has been my main issue in life, is knowing when to stop. Are you like that, or?
Yeah. No, I'm super just work. Yeah. Even all my pals are come on, let's go out into the sun. I'm no, I just have to do this one thing that's probably really pointless, but I need to do it,
Yeah, but it's also, you can't I'm really bad for just feeling I can't, or now the way that I do it is I have a list. Sometimes it's written down and sometimes it's not, but there's I know what I want to have done in that day, and until I have done it, I feel nervous or whatever, and it's and then I can let go afterwards. But yeah. So one thing I wanted to like talk to you about was obviously like you're quite involved in like the drag world, right? But like but then if you showed your standard person who'd just been like kind of watching like RuPaul's Drag Race or whatever, and then sort of was like, hey, check out this, they'd be like, what the fuck is going on? So like how do you feel that you particularly fall into that world? Because obviously I'm coming from a place of like relative ignorance. Like I got I wouldn't say forced into watching Drag Race by my wife, but like I wasn't. That's she just heard me say that in the background. She was like, "Ha!" And but like I was reluctant at first, but then like after a wee while, I was like, okay, now I kind of understand the theory behind it, I kind of got it a bit more, and then I was like, okay, now I'm into it. But still, you still like are pretty at odds with it, whereas the mainstream stuff is much more about beauty and celebration. Yours is kind of the opposite of that, right?
Yeah, I was listening to the interesting podcast the other day by a writer who wrote about like inter-performance and the problem of queerness. That was what the book's called. And she was saying how your typical like drag queen, you're kind of aiming for this kind of like hyper like perfected idea of beauty and femininity, whether like, that's not what my goal is at all. It's more like to show all the like the scenes and all the other kind of parts of it. It's like, I don't know how to word it, like it's not meant to be perfect, but it's also not meant to be inherently relatable.
I was going to say yours seems to be very particularly about you rather than an idea of like femininity or not femininity or anything. It seems to be much more particularly about, and this is also me, I've still not ever had a chance to see you live, but from what I've gathered, it's like seems to be much more particularly about your inner self.
Well, it's not even necessarily about that. It's more about embodying like a villain or an ogre, really. And like, so this kind of like monstrous energy and like the embodiment of a monster and what a monster means in a kind of social and cultural position. There was like, because when I started doing all of this, when I started doing drag,
do you to refer to yourself as being a drag artist then?
I don't even know, maybe at first, maybe in the beginning I did, because I felt like I was valid taking up space in that area, because not a lot of people like me in that space. And some of the performances that I do, I have lip synced before. Some of those things can be fit into that category.
Yeah, it's more like you get dropped on a bill, but it's like you're not necessarily, you don't fit, but it's like it's the best place for you, kind of thing.
Yeah. But there's a lot of drama that comes with it comes with drag and drag queens and all the rest of it, like
shocking.
Shocking, yeah. It's like I'm not really one for drama. I'm not like, I kind of like
that's what everyone that's well into drama says.
Yeah, that's like I'm not into drama, but
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so at first I struggled identifying with the word as well, because of that whole kind of like gender binary of like king or queen. But I knew like from the beginning that I wasn't, like, my character wasn't going to be either one of those. I didn't want it to be human. I wanted it to be post-human. I wanted it to be something that was so far removed from those ideals that you didn't necessarily think about that. But then also when I do play my character, it is more of a like critique of a kind of masculinity, of like a villainous kind of male, but it's always like a creature that is not human, but it does like pick up these those critiques, you know.
Yeah, I think as well, from what I've seen of the characters, like it's sort of, there's like a very specifically male aggressiveness to it, but it has this kind of slightly female flamboyance to it as well. And I think that's like it's like the cartoon-esque caricature villain, you know, that it always has that kind of like that sort of feminine flamboyance to it as well.
Well, it's like a I would even call it like a feminine flamboyance. I would just say it's like queer horror, you know, like in all of these tropes in horror films, the villains are always queer.
Yeah, totally. I was like, well, I mean, the best example of that, well, not in horror films, but in like mainstream culture, is like any Mel Gibson film where the villain is always kind of gay. So it's like, and if it's not bad enough that he's oppressing the Scots, he's also doing it in a kind of gay way. Like, you know,
Like, when I was in art school, I wrote my dissertation on a trope of films called like psychotrans horror, and they were all films that had like the villain as like a trans character, and that was like hidden. I mean, think of like Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, that kind of vibe, you know.
I always thought that was a very, very particular thing, like that they chose there, you know. Like,
but it's like it adds to this whole kind of idea of vilifying a trans person as well, and that projection of like a trans body being like horrifying. Yeah, it all adds into all of that, like the representation feeds into like the mainstream representation as well. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose especially back that was like early 90s or something when that came out. So it was like sort of the conversation about trans or non-binary people was non-existent back then. So it was kind of like, you know, like always we have like the fear of the unknown. So that's like the most unknown, you know.
So it's terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but then so when you started doing drag, so you never set out with your intention of being like, I'm going to do drag, but I'm going to do it in this like fucked up weird way. You were kind of, did you more just have this like vision in your head of what you wanted to do?
Well, I done more performance before, and then I knew that I wanted to have like one character that I would perform as regularly. And I spent a while thinking about it. And then my name on Instagram at the time was SHREK666. And I was like, I actually don't think I can pick a better name.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I got my pseudonym as well. It's just like it was the kind of thing where you just at one time you're like, yeah, it'd be kind of funny if I was called this, and then it just sticks forever, and you're like, oh, okay.
You just go with it, and there's certain points where I was like, maybe I should change my name because it's so stupid. Like, it's so stupid, and I'm like, maybe I should change it. And the more kind of like success that I get with it, the more I think, nah, actually, fuck it. Like, it's a joke. Like, I don't take myself very serious. Like, I think like no one should really. Obviously, there are works that are more serious, but like if it's under the name, you can like take it as like a parody, you know.
It opens it up a little bit to being kind of like slightly more tongue in cheek. Hang on, I just got to open the door for my dog. I know what you mean. It's like that is, especially when you're doing more dark art, it is a real problem where people seem to think that you're like this like hyper serious person, and like I get it a lot. My clients, for like tattoo clients, regularly tell me like, oh, you know, I thought that you were going to be like really serious and everything like that, and you know, you're not like how I thought you'd be. And it's just like, well, why are you even here if you thought I was going to be such a knob? Like,
I get that a lot too, you know. People say, oh my god, I thought you'd actually be terrifying, like, and even like if I was doing a gig and someone would see me perform and then I'd be out in the smoking area or whatever later, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're actually a nice person."
Yeah, oh, sorry to let you down. Like,
no, literally. And then it's like, oh, I'm not going to stay in character all night long. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
And then
well, yeah. I mean, do you feel like the character is part of you?
Definitely. Like, it's good to get like some parts of like anger out, some like parts of like rage out. That's like definitely like, processing it in a healthy way. And it is good to kind of like I held a workshop a wee while ago that was kind of like an introduction to like monstrous kind of characterization and prosthetics, and it was really good because I had this group of people and I got everyone to like, we done some like physical warm-ups. I had David Donan, who's been collaborating with me for a while, and he's a great dancer and a choreographer, and he's really good at workshops, and we just kind of got everyone to like move around the room like a monster, and like spoke about like, because when I thought about my character as well, I was like, well, kind of want to take like the parts of yourself that you don't maybe not necessarily like so much, and kind of like heighten that into something to make it a bit more like, I don't know, to push it to the front and embrace it in a way, and kind of like take the piss out of it as well, which is a real trope in drag as well. So yeah.
Well, how do you mean?
Like with drag, I think a lot of people like a lot of maybe people that do drag in a kind of monstrous way definitely like perform in that kind of way as well, where you're like taking things that aren't necessarily like nice, and you're just kind of like push it and have fun with it, and don't take it so seriously, and that definitely helps like in like accepting those parts of yourself as well.
Yeah, I think that's now that you say that is sort of it. It's like the if you can't laugh, you'll cry thing.
Yeah.
So kind of like, yeah, I think that's like a huge thing that like a lot of like artistic people could really like benefit from, is kind of like taking themselves slightly less seriously. Because I mean, even when you're doing something that to you is like really, really deep and kind of like difficult for you to cope with, the reality is to most other people it's not going to seem that way. So you should at least kind of admit that, and you're going to live much easier knowing or be accepting the fact that other people aren't going to understand what you're trying to do, and ultimately everything that we're doing is really dumb anyway. So like, when it's, especially one thing I always like, in the same way in the drag world, like tattooing, people can be really egotistical because they're being supplied constantly with that client every day that's telling them how amazing they are and all this stuff, and it is very easy to like start to listen to that, and believe it. But I mean, ultimately, we're just doing silly pictures of skulls on people. Like we're not changing the world or anything. Like, and our work can be really important to the person that's getting it. But then that's what's important. It's not you.
Yeah, totally. And I do want, and I do like with the work that I'm doing, I do want to kind of like remove a lot of kind of like individualism from it, and kind of like open it up to a more like broader like spectrum of kind of like, I don't know, of like, when I think about when you think about building like community, like, and this is something in the queer community that people should probably listen to. People say like, oh well, when you say like, oh, LGBTQ plus whatever, you immediately think of like how people are the same, innit? But like how much is like a gay man similar to like a trans man or a trans woman or anything like that? It's not necessarily like those things make you the same, but it's like the place place and the setting that brings people together, and that's like the sense of like sameness that should be celebrated more. And that's how community could be celebrated more.
That's always, or not always, but in recent years has been a huge, from what I've seen, an issue with like left-wing politics, that there's so many not avenues, but so many schools of thought within left-wing politics that are at odds with each other. And, you know, and this is how we end up with like TERFs and shit like that. And I mean, do you, as someone who's like deep within that community, like I've always been like a left-wing person, but I don't like, or a left-wing leaning person, but I don't like to like prescribe myself to any sort of ideology unless, you know, because I didn't make it up. So, you know, it's like I can't attribute myself to anything. But do you feel like there's going to be some sort of solution to this moving forward? Because, I mean, especially with the way the world is now, you know, it's like very harshly polarized, right? But the problem is that right-wing people are really, really fucking good at organizing themselves, and more and more left-wing people are getting worse and worse and more disparate in terms of their schools of thought. So yeah, what do you foresee the future holding for that?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a lot of right-wing politics and a lot of these right-wing kind of activist groups or whatever, they come together based on ideas of like hatred, really. Hatred onto minority groups. And more people, like there's even people in the left that are like littered with TERFs. A lot of politicians, and all of that, and I fuck knows like how to handle all of that, like. But I do think that a lot of the time, especially on like platforms like Twitter, when you see a lot of that kind of energy, it almost, if one person says something, a lot of people will react to that, and then you kind of forget about all of the good other people, because so focused on this
they
one.
don't react to nice things, you know, because they're nice, they're fine as they are, right? Like it's the what do you call it, the vocal minority, you know. And yeah, like you say, you only remember the things that fuck you off. Yeah, because everything else is just business as usual, right? Yeah, I mean, that's basically my fear, that the left-wing politics is becoming ever more disparate because of, you know, individual, you know, like so like we said, right-wing politics, I would say, is defined by excluding people. Like, you're kind of going like, this is my group and I only care about this group, and like, you know, basically fuck everyone else. And then left-wing politics can be characterized by, we should care that our circle of compassion is, you know, ever more infinite. But then it does seem that, for example, like with TERFs and stuff, they would still characterize themselves as being like kind of left-wing, but then they're picking a group as well, which is like sort of like weird right-wing modes of thinking that are infiltrating the left, that are then dividing things up in a much weirder way.
Yeah.
I think it's a much more like infinite circle of compassion is much more complicated in practice than it is to have a very tight circle of compassion, right? Yeah.
And you really think that it shouldn't be that difficult to just kind of like support the people around you, like you think that wouldn't be like a really difficult fucking thing to do, but yeah. It's just such a shame how many kind of, especially like writers as well, how many kind of like second wave feminist writers who have maybe made some good work in the past, some some like really nice work, and then they go and say something that kind of like throws all that out the fucking window, and it's almost as if, it's almost as like, well, you don't necessarily have that authority over that work anymore because that work's not for you. Like, yeah, I'm thinking of a text that Faye Wilden wrote, that one of my housemates, Donna, who's a musician, she recently made a film based on a text by Faye Wilden, and spent a lot of time on this film, and was going to like show it on our live stream last Sunday, but then found out that she had said some really like transphobic stuff and really turfy stuff, and yeah, my housemate just didn't know what the fuck to do, because
totally. That's a huge problem with like, that's a perfect example of why I never attribute myself to having a particular political belief which has been defined by someone else, because then you spend your life constantly defending how other people are doing it wrong, right? It's like I would never want to like, I always feel really sorry for like well-meaning like far left people, because they're constantly having to defend like like Cambodia and shit. It's just like I personally, I don't want to attribute myself to any political thing, because then when you see other people doing it wrong and still saying it's that thing, you're constantly having to be like, oh no, but they're not doing it right, and it just it seems like a losing battle to me.
It gets like exhausting.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm not willing to do that. And I also kind of feel like there's something to do with like the balance of energy in the world, that if you create a political ideology, you have to take away from some things to put to another thing, and ultimately things are always going to be unbalanced for some people. I mean, and then that's what pragmatism comes in, and that's why in my opinion, left-leaning stuff is always going to end up a bit better pragmatically. So that's the way to go. But yeah, I don't want to ever like say I'm a certain thing, because then I'll just have to defend it when I don't feel like I need to.
Yeah.
So yeah, what did she end up doing with that then?
Didn't show it. She didn't show it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Yeah, because then you get the backlash, right?
Well, it's like we were talking about it. I said personally, if I had made this film and I spent all this time working on it, and the film is really good. It's really good. And the story is really beautiful, and it's something that that my housemate related to, that I could relate to as well. And I said, well, maybe if that was me, I would maybe like take a little video of me at the beginning talking about, giving it a context or whatever. But because the stream was like a party, maybe that's not the right.
Yeah, it's kind of a boner kill.
Yeah. But maybe like in future, to kind of like contextualize it in like a critique could work. But yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think it's a huge thing in the modern world where there's the constant with like people getting constantly taken down by cancel culture and stuff. It does make things very complicated, because like there is loads of instances where that is a valid thing to do. But the problem is who decides that, right? There's not sort of an elected body of officials that we all believe are definitely going to be doing the right thing. And then we end up with what do you feel about that sort of phenomenon that happens on the internet? Because for example, if your friend had done like a sort of commentary at the beginning, you can imagine what would have happened. There's always someone that has something extra to say, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a weird one. Like, It also kind of brings into that question, is like, oh well, do you separate the person from the work that they had made? But I think a lot of the time can't really do that.
Yeah, but then that's also, for me, I would agree that, you know, like basically someone's work is a sum of their whole life, right? But then, like, for example, no matter how much I listened to like Burzum, I'm not going to become a Nazi. Like, it doesn't, you know, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to morph my opinion. It's not going to change my opinions on something. Like, I think if you know yourself, that's very different to seeking something out in order to have your mind change. You have to be open to that, you know. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that question. I just wanted to see what you're going to say. But yeah, so like, do you feel like there's like a line between sort of performance art and drag, or do you think like drag is just sort of a part of what we would call performance art?
I think it's definitely like a form of performance and performance art. I think a lot of the time, maybe it's not taken with the same gravity as someone who would say, I'm a performance artist and this is my work.
Yeah.
You know, and like when I was in art school, I was doing drag. I was performing as Shrek like quite a lot, and especially in my final year. And when I would have like crits and things, I often felt like a lot of the people in my class didn't necessarily want to engage as much within that work, and they almost like didn't take it as seriously. But I also think that is a form of queerphobia within fine art. A lot of fine artists are really willing to take the aesthetics of queer work and drag, but will at the same time not treat it as a valid not treat the practice as valid as maybe some others. So that's definitely like an institutional queer phobia.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that's like a kind of just, you know, like the art world is just as subjective to the patriarchy as anything else, or
100%, 100%, like
because it's all basically like, you know, white guys wearing berets running the show, right?
rich white people.
Yeah, it is though. That's the tragic thing about the art world, is that it's bourgeois as fuck, and it's, you know, and it's in the most cynical way, like, it's so dominated by money that, like, I mean, have the goal of being well renowned in, you know, the art world is just as like trite as someone wanting to be on fucking Britain's Got Talent, you know. Like, it's exactly the same, because it, you know, there's Simon Cowell, but there's, you know, the Simon Cowells of the art world as well.
Yeah.
And they're not driven by art; they're driven by making money.
Yeah, totally.
So, like, what do you right? So, like, because I never, like, I've always been into art and stuff. I've never been in the art world, really. Like, I've always been more like the sort of music world and like punk and everything like that. So, could you explain a bit more about that notion of the sort of queer phobia in the art world? Because, like, that's like news to me, right? I mean, when you say it, then, you know, like, obviously it makes sense, because you know, like what I just asked, like, you know, whether it's part of the kind of overarching patriarchy in general, but how does it manifest itself, and like how sort of obvious is it?
Well, when I was in art school, even like tutorials that I would have with artists who are tutors, It was GSA, Glasgow School of Art, that I was at.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they didn't even want to say the word queer when they were engaging with my work, as if it was like a dirty word. And
well, they thought they would like be devaluing your work even by saying it.
Not necessarily, no. I don't think that's the case, but it was almost as if they were like scared to say it, or didn't know how to engage with it. And
how long was this?
What?
How long ago was this?
This was a year, 2 years ago.
Oh, right. Fuck. Okay. I mean, just the way that you're talking about it, sounds like it was like fucking, before we were where we are now.
No, this was, I just graduated last year, so this was.
Oh, right. Shit. Okay.
This is like, fairly.
I thought it was like, when you say something like that, especially in an art school, it seems like it was like in like the 80s or something, before there was like a kind of trans conversation happening in the mainstream society,
Yep. And I mean, I was very fortunate in my final year to have a really good tutor, Craig Mulholland, who's a great artist, and he was like very supportive of my work. He got it. We had really great conversations, and if I didn't have them during that last year, I think that would have been I would have been really angry and frustrated, because no one else really wanted to engage in the kind of like subject matter. Like a lot of the work is based within like different ideas of like queer theorists and writers, and I want to like open up that conversation, and like I want to have a critique, and I want people to engage with it. And so I struggled to find people who were willing to engage with what I was trying to say. And I have other friends.
Why do you think that was? Do you think it was because? Do you think they felt like it's because it's a non-subject?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was because of that. I think maybe. I think they just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I think they just didn't know what to say,
But is that because they just like, until you presented them with these ideas, they hadn't thought about it. So then they're like kind of being like, oh fuck, I'm supposed to come back with some sort of intelligent critique here, but really I've got nothing valid to say because this is my first time thinking about it,
I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know what goes on in the minds of these men.
Yeah.
But
any female or gay or anything tutors at all, or is it all guys?
Well, there was a couple of women who were tutors, and I didn't really speak to them in my final year. I spoke to them in kind of like the lead up and stuff, and there was a few who were like, oh, this is interesting, and they gave me some good references. That one tutor, Craig, he is queer, and we have a lot of similar interests. So that was good.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, that's the thing, is like, if you're actually doing something interesting, it's very, if you're doing something that's genuinely interesting, it's pretty hard for you to fit into the way that like the education system for art is structured,
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete institution. It's
just to make it easier for marking, like that's all it is, right?
It doesn't make it fucking easy for marking, especially if it's like a performance, and I would perform
for them, the whole institution is made it so that they can do their marking on people that are doing normal things. Like, it's not made, marking and stuff is made very difficult by people that are doing something that someone hasn't already done.
Yeah, but then because I had that one tutor who did completely get it, I did get a really good mark.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's the problem with how subjective art is as well, though, because if you didn't have that one guy, you'd be fucked, right?
Yeah, totally. I would not have done. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do in art school anyway. But
yeah, exactly. As long as you get, like, it's more about what you get out of it, right? Yeah. Rather than than what mark you get or whatever.
Yeah. But I did. In my whole time there, I felt very frustrated. I felt like anything that I tried to do came up to the barriers. But that's also to do with the state of the school at the moment. Like it's incomplete. Like it's completely chaotic. Like that's totally understaffed and over capacity, and really difficult to get into workshops and things like that. But yeah.
I mean, do you feel like that it's still like a valuable thing to do to like go to art school?
I mean, I had fun.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, yeah, like, but do you think that the institution of art schools like still sort of has its place?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the best parts that I got from my degree were all from outside of the school. So it was the people that I met whilst I was there, and the use of like the art school like club as a venue to like run, host all these events at. Well, obviously that venue is now closed. It's went into liquidation. The Art School Student Union. And if I didn't have that in my time there, I would have had a completely different time. It definitely, like, as far as like events go, like opened me up to a lot more and gave me a lot of opportunities to run bigger events that I wouldn't have the money to do so, and host my own events for the first time and things like that. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it definitely does really matter how you approach it, because like I always look back at my time at university like, fuck, I wish I had like, you know, done it differently, because I could have got so much more out of it. But at the same time, it's like you kind of feel that I just have like I think the problem is that it does feel like it's all geared towards like, you know, creating box tickers, and because, you know, it's a system and the system has like an end product, and if you don't fit in that like sphere, then it's going to turn out badly for you, and that can be fucking annoying, right? Like
Yeah. I mean, I suppose if I were to go back, I would have done a different course. I studied painting and printmaking, but I don't really paint or printmake.
Yeah. So why did you do that?
Because that's what I applied for when I was in college. I used to paint a lot, but it wasn't really. I don't know. It's just what I applied for. I tried to change course at one point, but they wouldn't let me because I'm a Scottish student and they wanted more money from international students.
Yeah.
So they're like, nah, you've got to stay where you are. And I was like, right, okay, well, I'm just going to make this work for me. And that was that.
Yeah, fair. So like there was one, I was trying to find it again on your Instagram page that we clipped from that magazine interview you just did recently, where you were talking about not being human, but I couldn't find it on your page.
Right.
Like, can you talk a wee bit more about that, because that was for me particularly interesting, because it was something that I kind of really like identified with, and it's things that I've said to people before about myself, but I've always been met with like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it again, but I can't find it.
Wait, I've got it here. I've got it. So.
Oh yeah.
The question was, monstrosity is an important theme in your work. What does the monster represent for you? And I said, I view the monster as abject in its physicality, no longer a metaphor or nightmare, but a body against binary structure. And binary structures and social criteria of normality. And then the other question was, so would you say you're questioning what it means to be human? And I thought the first edit of this interview was really posed up to a kind of like the narrative of it was talking to me as if I was like aiming for like a post-human like view of the future.
Okay.
They did change the article quite a lot before they published it. But anyway, the answer I said was, performance practices can be used as a means to disrupt bodily boundaries and resist definitions. I'm resisting the definition of human and chasing something else.
Yeah. So so you're not. You wouldn't say you're like, in terms of the future, trying to deconstruct the notion of being human for everyone then, or
No.
Can you elaborate on that answer?
Like, I'm not trying to say like I'm not trying to say like I'm trying to change this for everyone, but like for like my personal character as an ogre, as any kind of like other kind of like monstrous creature, it's like I don't want to. I think if you remove yourself from what you think you know of yourself, if say, oh, like I'm a human, but let's fucking patch that. Let's see what other kind of like opportunities and possibilities are there. And I'm thinking that there's this one quote from a bell hooks quote that says marginality is a space for like endless possibility. And I like that because it kind of I think a lot of the time as well when you are like in like a marginalized group, it's like me as like a trans person, you're often told that you are lesser than human, you know, in the way that media is represented or whatever. But then with the character that I would perform as, I would say that, oh, I'm like more than human, you know. I'm thinking of do you ever watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer? So all the like demons in Buffy, they're all like not human. They're villains, but they use all of the actors either use like a human form. They're animated. They're like used with prosthetics add on to the form.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's like augmented.
It's what?
Augmented.
Yeah. Yeah. And you like it's like, and when you think of like posthumanism, one kind of example of like posthumanism is prosthetics, not necessarily just like the kind of prosthetics that I wear as when I'm on stage or whatever, but like when you say like prosthetic limbs, prosthetic legs, all of these things that you add on to your body to enhance it. Like, yeah, that's the vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'll just explain my kind of feeling that I've kind of had since I was like much younger, but to you, and let's see if it's something that you identify with. And it's just like I have never struggled with like my like gender or anything. Like I've always felt very like straightforwardly cis masculine, right? But I've always had this kind of weird thing where it's like there's a lot of the time that I feel like that, you know, I'm just not like other people in terms of that I don't feel necessarily that I'm like the same species as them. You know, sometimes I feel like so separate from most of humanity that I'm just like, I can't be the same as them because I just don't feel like I'm within that group. And then in my kind of like recent albums and stuff, that's really something that I was like looking at that that feeling and that notion, and then I kind of personified all these different like characters out of my like inner like my inner personalities. I kind of divided them up and then personified them. Like, and they're all these kind of like, you know, augmented humanoid characters, but they're like, you know, to visually emphasize like these sort of negative parts of my personality. But is this like, there's always been this like kind of weird under feeling of that I just must be separate somehow. And that's, and a lot of people, when I've said this to a lot of people, they've taken it as like, it's like a very arrogant thing. And it's like that I feel like I'm better than people somehow. And it's like, it's totally not that. It's just like, I'm different. Like, is that something that you can identify with, or?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's fucking different. Everyone is different from the person next to them, you know, and I think definitely like it's like great to embrace that and like using characters and things as well, like no matter how like kind of like different they may at first seem, they are going to be like useful tools to help you like understand yourself better.
Yeah, the more time you spend thinking about it and the more time you have to like lay it out and actually write things and then make things, and it makes you like, if you physically see something and construct it, you're going to understand it in a way that you never could if you're just sitting there thinking about it or like pretending it wasn't real, you know, like.
Yeah. And then to embody it is like I have so much fun to like fully just embody this kind of like absolutely like minging character, you know. It's like you, and sometimes I struggle to like totally release myself from it, you know, release any like doubt or anxieties, but when you do, and you are like in that moment of just kind of like pure embodiment, it's like so, it's just so like freeing.
Yeah. So what you mean is like sometimes you're struggling to actually fully like immerse yourself in it because you're still, your conscious mind is still there. Yeah. But like, I mean, do you feel like I feel when I'm like, you know, like properly performing and, you know, like my music's like really extreme and everything. And one phrase that I came out with during therapy for what I feel like when I'm on stage, and I feel like I'm kind of my most like, you know, my conscious mind just like turns off completely, and I call it like it's like a sort of euphoric rage, you know, that kind of overwhelms you. And it's like, I mean, like the best gigs that I've ever played, I completely don't remember them, you know. It's like the first, like I remember like psyching myself up at the start, and then as soon as it all kicks in, then it's like I just like come back to consciousness at the end of it, and that's it, you know. And I'm like completely emotionally and physically drained, but I don't really remember actually engaging with it at any point, you know.
I mean, you're taking your head to another space. You're and that's, and like with other kind of like performances that I do that are more kind of like body intensive, so like ones with like tattooing or like needles, anything that involves like a physical like pain or some form of like real like physical restraint, that also like really like heightens that, to just kind of like to alter like the perception of like how my everyday mind works. It's like I want to go somewhere else.
Yeah. What is it about like doing things in front of people that makes you kind of go like that, do you think? Like, why is it that when we do it in front of people, it becomes much more that we actually lose ourselves in it, you know?
I suppose it's probably a lot of different things, but when you feel all of these eyes like watching you, and you are aware of like an audience per se, it's like that adrenaline.
Yeah, it just automatically kicks it in much harder and faster. Yeah. It's like this is go time. Like there's no messing around. You have to do it to its most right now. Yeah, it's like a jump start, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Like fight or flight. Like we're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. So let's fucking do it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think also though, there's like that atmosphere in the room where you feel there's there's something about the atmosphere when you know that like everyone in the room is in the same headspace, you know, like and becomes like ritualistic, and you know, and you can feel the air in the room that like your performance has dragged people into like a similar headspace that you're obviously trying to convey. Like that's to me like the ultimate thing, and that I'm so interested in like ritual and stuff because of that notion of like atmosphere of people coming together to engage in a headspace that is like unordinary, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking back to this performance that I done last September, where I really didn't know how it was going to go down with an audience, because that was the one where my friend John, who's a really good piercer, had pierced like my arms and my chest, and it was in 16 Nicholson Street in one of the rooms up the stairs, and I'd made like a mix for it, like an hour-long mix. And my goal for that performance was to perform like as an object. I wanted to be like viewed as an object, and I didn't know how other people were gonna like really react to it. Like ideally, what I would have wanted was people to kind of like, you know, just like walk in the room, make conversation, chat a little bit. But as soon as it started, everyone just sat down. they just sat down, watched, and no one said a word for a full hour whilst I just bled.
Yeah.
Like, because Jean was like pulling the needles out of me. And there was some on my face as well, and like right here as well, is where like all the like so much blood comes out. And it was such a strange experience because like, I mean, I could feel a lot of pain, but it wasn't like a bad pain.
No,
but
it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone in the room was just so silent. No one even took any photographs.
Yeah.
People started crying, and then some people just left. Some people were just like, I can't handle this.
Yeah, sounds like a win to me.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate. Yeah, it's like, yeah, my favorite gig that I ever played was like at a hardcore techno night in Glasgow, and I was playing in like a band that was like a cross between hardcore techno and punk, and like within the first 30 seconds, half the crowd left, and then over the course of, you know, the rest of it, half of the half left. But then the quarter of the people that were left there were like so fucking into it, you know? And like that's, to me, is that like that's when you know you're doing something right. But yeah, so like, I mean, yeah, so you, in a way, like your original goals for that performance were kind of completely deconstructed. But would you say it was a success, or?
I would definitely say it was a success. It was an intense performance, and it was an emotional performance, and the room could like definitely feel that, you know. But it is one of those things where like, I know like some people wouldn't necessarily like that. Some people have triggers. Maybe like blood is going to be one of them. Pain is going to be one of them, and that's something that I'm always thinking about when before I go on, and even now with the videos as well, because I do like to push it, especially live, as to kind of like what I can do and get away with. But it's actually a lot easier to kind of gauge people's comfort levels if it's live, as to how far I can go. Some people are like really, really into it. Some people have complained about me before.
But I mean, so like to interrupt you, like, why the fuck does anyone think that art should be comfortable? That's the whole point of art to me. You're like, no, you can have art that's comfortable, but that's for that, and like uncomfortable art is just as valid, you know. And I don't see why anyone should feel like they're entitled to being comfortable all the time. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Exactly, and I also agree with that. But then when it comes to performing in club spaces, do operate a safer space policy, and that's that like we really push in our club nights to make sure people feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's fair then. Yeah, if that's like a prerequisite, then that's different, right? Yeah.
So to then bring a performance into that space that is a bit more challenging and not everyone is going to like, I also think is completely valid in that kind of idea of a safer space, because how do people, I always think, like, to understand what we want from a space, we need to understand what we don't want from a space. You know, how can we try and like build these spaces of queer clubbing, queer utopia, or any kind of club space that makes the wider majority of people feel comfortable. You can't just say, oh well, this is what we need, that and that. Well, you don't know. You haven't really, like, you haven't tried everything. So and if that space isn't necessarily for you, then that's fine. You know, that's how I go about it as well. Like, if you're not enjoying that, that's fine, you can leave.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like in a space like that, you're kind of like a risky one to put on in the first place. Like, and you know, no one should. It's not going to be a surprise. Like, really.
The people that know what I do, then they'll come to see it. Then that's sound, and they know what to expect. But for the people that don't, that's where it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
But I do think that especially in like queer club space, that challenge and performance should be something that's celebrated, and something that people shouldn't just like dismiss.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of performers that are doing shit purely to like shock people with no like further or higher level of thought to it, though, which is just like, which kind of fucks it up for everyone, though. You know what I mean? Like I had a conversation recently with one of my friends who's in a band. They're like kind of more of an industrial band, and they always put on like put extra effort into doing like like performative theatrical stuff. And they were talking. He said that he was talking with one of the guys about, he was like, oh, I want to get a projector and put stuff on the projector. And he was like, well, what do you want to put on it? And he was like, oh, like skulls and war and stuff like that. And he's like, why? Like, and he's like, oh, I don't know, just like because it would be cool. And it's like, but why would it be cool? What's the point? You can't just like put stuff there without any reason for it. Then it's pointless.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of context that's necessary if you want to do something like that, for sure. Yeah.
So do you watch Drag Race and shit?
I do watch it, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of the whole fucking sherry pie thing? You knew I was going to ask you that.
I don't know. I mean, like, I think she's a cunt. Like, she's an abuser. Her actions were fucking shite. She treated people like shit, and she shouldn't be on the show. Like, I have so many other issues with that show as well.
Please go into that. I'm into that because that was the other thing that I was going to ask.
I mean,
there's I remember one, like, in particular. I remember RuPaul writing an article that I read that was really a good article, but the problem with it was he was talking about the commodification of gayness and how like gayness isn't like a thing that should be bought and sold as like a marketing technique and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's true, but no one is more complicit in that than you. And I don't even blame you for doing that, but then don't complain about it as well.
I mean, my main issue with him is obviously he doesn't let trans people on the show. He doesn't let trans women who are drag queens go onto the show. He has had one in the past, Peppermint. But they told her that she couldn't actually like physically start her medical transition before going on the show, and she had to dress in boy clothes. RuPaul was transphobic. And then in the UK Drag Race as well, that was recently there. Davina De Campo, the queen that was on it. So she had a whole episode where she like came out as non-binary and this lovely, beautiful, emotional episode, and they completely cut it from the show. So, and for him to have a platform that big and to actively exclude all these really important and crucial members of the community is really disgusting.
Has he justified or tried to justify or given any reason why he does that? Or
he said something like, "Oh, we don't want to like confuse audiences." It's some bullshit like
that's
that.
That's like what do I tell my children when two men are kissing? You know, that's exactly that argument.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, we don't want to like confuse audiences or whatever." And he said a whole array of really disgusting like transphobic things. Like he made a tweet once that was like, "Oh well, you wouldn't let like Olympians take steroids for like the Olympics or whatever," comparing like a trans woman taking hormones on Drag Race. That's what she said, which is like absolute fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it's a non-argument. That completely.
Yeah, a non-argument. He's just choosing to be excluding these people because why? Because he's a fucking arsehole.
Yeah, well, it's just because that's his prejudice, basically.
Yeah. And he's got a fracking farm. Do you know this?
What?
He's got this big land in America, and he's fracking from it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've always kind of commended his like absolute like merciless capitalism, like in terms of like, hey man, if you want to be the Simon Cowell of gayness, then fucking go for it. But that's like a whole new level. It's like trying to make a sort of like gay evil empire for himself or something.
He's done a completely evil empire.
Yeah.
And he treats a lot of the queens that were on the show. He treats them like shit. He has them under contracts, he's just an arsehole. So
okay, all right. Well, I watched his masterclass thing. Do you know that website Masterclass?
No.
Oh, it's kind of like it's almost like a mini YouTube, but they get like really famous people to like do these master classes in like business or like leadership or shit like that. But RuPaul did one, and it was about it was entitled like becoming your truest self, and then also did like there was a whole section on like doing makeup and stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, you know, like, I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff about him, but yeah, it's pretty fucking shocking.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for ruining my day, and now I'm not going to be able to watch the Drag Race final. Fuck's sake.
I mean, I'm probably still gonna watch it as well. I have to say, I do like Crystal Methods, who's on the show this year. Yeah, she's good. I like her.
Yeah, Gigi's pretty good. Like, I was talking with Abby. Like, Abby really likes her, and I was like, she's really, really good, but I don't feel like impassioned by her at all. She's just like really good at doing it, if you get what I mean. Like, I don't feel like ever like there's like much deeper level or notion to what she's doing. She's just like really good at executing it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And she's got a very good look as well, like her body and everything. But like, yeah, I don't feel particularly impassioned by any of them out this year.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man, we've been talking for fucking ages now, so we better wrap it up. But yeah, it's really nice to actually like properly meet you finally. Yeah,
it's been good. Yeah.
So do I just quickly say like how people can check you out and that? Yeah,
sure. So my Instagram is at Ogrebabe. SoundCloud at I think it's SHREK666.
I'll put the link. If you send me the links, I'll put them on the description, right? Yeah.
Cool. And we're doing another Shoot Your Shot live stream on the 6th of June, which will have like my part 2 of a 2-part performance So the second part will be on there, and then we've got an amazing guest performer, Charity Case. Do you know Charity?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
She's got a video for us, and then we've got Bonsai Bonner giving us the tunes, and DJ Pauletta as well, who's amazing. Going to be DJing as well. So
awesome,
yeah, fun.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.
See you later.